Thank you, everybody. It's 10:30. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee. We've got one or two new faces, including my own. And I'm going to start off by introducing myself. So I'm James Gamble, and I'm the County Councillor for Sherwood Forest. I'm pleased to know that I'm also the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee Chair, but I'm also going to be working alongside the Vice Chair, who is County Councillor Choudhury, who represents Mansfield Ward on the County Council. And to all members, officers, pensioner reps and advisors of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee, I extend you a very special and warm welcome. Your contributions and perspectives will be invaluable to the fund over subsequent years during this term. This week, we've also successfully appointed another new pensioner rep who's been here previously, which is Neil Timms. Welcome aboard, Neil.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now, I'd also like to thank the previous chair, Mr. Eric Kelly, for all his hard work and contributions during that term. And for the majority of that term, there was also a vice chair called Sue Saddington. And I'd also like to extend my thanks to Sue for her dedication and commitment, as well as Eric, to the pension fund over the last few years. Thank you. Now, just a kindly reminder that this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube. So we've got a microphone, so viewers can hear the presentation and questions of today's meeting. I'd also like all members, officers and representatives over the next few minutes to introduce yourselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a round robin. Obviously, I've introduced myself, James Gamble, County Councillor, and then we're going to start with Dom, and then we'll work all the way around.
Hi, I'm Dom Monaghan, Advanced Democratic Services Officer, and I'm McCloud to this committee. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry.
You can if you want.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Stuart Bestwick. I represent the Newstead Division for the Conservatives.
My name is Councillor Choudhury. I'm from Mansfield South Division, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Pension Fund.
I'm Bert Bingham. I'm Nottinghamshire County Councillor for Works on West.
I'm Kevin Brown, County Councillor for Mansfield South.
Stuart Matthews, County Councillor for Leek and Region.
Good morning, Stephen Pearson. I'm a Conservative member for Bingham East.
Good morning, Roger Jackson, member for Southwell.
Good morning, James Rawson. I'm the Reform member for Kimberley Nuttall.
Morning, folks. Darrell Paul. I'm a district councillor on Possible District Council, representing Sutton Ward, but here today representing the District Council.
I've been here since the building was built. My name's Councillor. It's one of the four that's left as Labour in the County Council. I also lead the Edinburgh Council.
The Councillor Zafran Khan from Nottingham City Council representing Luton. Chris King, Pensioners representative. Artillery School representing years.
John Cockcroft, Trade Union representative representing GMB.
Hello, I'm Neil Timms. I'm a pensioners representative.
William Bourne, independent advisor. I've been with the fund for about 10 years.
Tamsin Rabbits, Head of Pension Fund Investments.
Kieran Guilfoyle, Investments Officer, and I work in Tamsin's team.
I'm Sarah Stevenson. I head up the Business Services Centre, which includes responsibility for pensions administration. I'm supported today by two colleagues from the pensions administration team in the presentation of the McCloud report later on this morning, and they are
Mark Lane, the project manager for the pension fund.
Claire Thomas, technical regulation senior practitioner.
Morning, I'm Jo Toomey. I'm the governance officer for the pension fund.
And good morning, I'm Nigel Stevenson. I'm the 6151 officer here in Nottinghamshire.
Lovely. Thank you, everyone, for calling out the names. Right, so just got to read this out. Before we begin the meeting, I would like to remind those members of the public that are present that placards, banners, advertising materials and similar items are not permitted in any committee meeting and must be covered or removed. Failure to comply may result in that member of the public being asked to leave the meeting. Members of the public should remain seated during any debate and not do anything in danger of the health and safety of any person. Members of the public may record proceedings and report all public meetings. However, any person recording must not distract the good order of the meeting. And please, everybody, turn your mobile phones or electronic devices switch to silent. Thank you. All right, so we're going to make a start. There's 18 agenda items. It's rather a packed agenda. So we're going to do our best to do this in a timely manner. So we're going to start with number one, agenda item number 1, which is appointment of chairman and vice chairman. And the committee is just asked to note the appointment by full council on the 22nd of May 2025 of Councillor James Gamble as chairman and Councillor Vice Choudhury as vice chairman of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee for the 2025 and 26 municipal year. Thank you. It's been noted. Right. Number 2, agenda item number 2, membership of the committee for the 2025-26 municipal year. The committee is now asked to note its membership for the 2025-2026 municipal year as set out on the agenda cover sheet. You've all seen those members? Okay, thank you.
Chair, and if I could just add to that, there's been 2 changes since the agenda front sheet was published. Councillor Adele Williams from Nottingham City Council has replaced Councillor AJ Matsinko, and we've also appointed to the vacant pensioner representative position, and that's Neil Timms. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Don, for adding those items. Okay, lovely. So we're now on to agenda item number 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting held on 13th of March 2025. Obviously, quite a few members who weren't here during that meeting. So I'd just like to now ask the committee for the minutes from the last meeting to be agreed and take a vote by show of hands.
Chair, can I just ask for a correction on there that the substitutes at June Creamer, Councillor June Creamer, substitutes is not on the minutes. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, right, so we're going to take a vote now on the minutes of the last meeting in March. Those for? Approve. Yeah. Those against? Any abstentions?
I wasn't there.
No. Okay, right, so we now move on to agenda item number 4. Apologies for absence. Dominic, it's over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Barry Answer under the category Other County Council Business. We've also received apologies from Councillors Graham Chapman and Adele Williams from Nottingham City Council and from Councillor Andy Edmere from Rushcliffe Borough Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Dom. That's been noted. Right, so we now move on to agenda item number 5, which is declarations of interest by members and officers.
Chair, can I make a declaration? I work for a law firm which has been advising the pension fund historically and has been involved in the acquisition of some of the sites within Appendix A that are owned by the pension fund. I don't think it's directly relevant for any item of business today, but I thought I should declare it for the avoidance of doubt.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearson. Right, does any other councillor or officer have any interest in any matter on the agenda? Okay, that's been noted. Right, so we now move on to agenda item number 6, which is the McCloud rectification determination. And before I hand over to Sarah Stevenson to introduce the report, I'd just like to move the recommendations on page 13 of the agenda pack, which, as a kind of reminder, is that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee agrees the implementation of the McCloud remedy be extended to 31st of August 2025. 2026, sorry, 2026. Got it, 2026 on my paper. Okay, so Sarah, it's over to you. Oh, sorry, yes.
I second.
Just now just going to ask for a seconder.
I second.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Choudhury. Now I'm going to hand over to Sarah Stevenson, Group Manager for the Business Services Centre here at Nottinghamshire County Council.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. This morning I'm going to present a report asking Pensions Committee to approve the extension of the McCloud remedy implementation date to the 31st of August 2026. In the presentation of the report today, I'll go into a little bit more detail because this will be the first time this setup of committee has probably heard the details of McCloud. So in 2014, the local government pension scheme changed from final salary scheme to a career average scheme. Pensions based on service after the 1st of April 2014 would be based on an individual's career average salary. Protections were applied to those nearing retirement age, but a legal challenge to changes to the Judges' Pension Fund, known as McCloud, established that those protections amounted to age discrimination, and all public sector pension schemes were required to remedy this discrimination. The remedy period spans from the 1st of April 2014 to the 31st of March 2022, and schemes are mandated to assess the benefits payable. This is done by calculating whether the pension of those people who were active members during the remedy period would have been higher under the final salary scheme, and if so, the member would be entitled to an increased entitlement benefits. Initial plans targeted full rectification by August 2025, in line with government guidance. However, several developments have prompted a reassessment of this timeline. Under the Public Services Pension Act 2013 and LGPS Regulations 2024, it is possible for the fund to make a determination to extend the implementation phase to the 31st of August 2026. So the rationale for seeking this extension. Over the last 4 years, significant work has been undertaken by the Pensions Administration team to collect over 60,000 lines of additional member data. Clearly, this is an extensive job. Once this data has come into the fund, we are required to validate it, to analyse it, to revalidate it, and then to load it onto the member's record. This also has generated significant queries. Funds have also experienced a number of other issues. Delays for the updates to the required software modules to enable the calculations to be performed, outstanding guidance and legislation amendments, and also we've had a reliance on additional information to come in from third parties. The administration team also has significant resource constraints and competing priorities. Engaging with other LGBS funds via the East Midlands Pensions Officer Group and the Central Admin Group, lots of funds are in a very similar position, and they too are seeking committee approval to extend the implementation to the 31st of August 2026. The table on page 4 sets out our proposed revised timeline for meeting the extended deadline and the associated risks that have been considered. We've taken advice from our actuary, Barnett Waddingham, and consulted with the Pension Board as well, where a quorum of members are supportive of this request. We've also considered the other options available to us. Not seeking the extension would result in the fund breaching its statutory requirement and would require us to report this to the pension regulator. The recommendations in this report are that the Pensions Committee agree the implementation of the McCloud remedy is extended to the 31st of August 20 as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. A very comprehensive report there. Now, this is an opportunity for any committee members who may wish to speak on this agenda item. Is there anybody here to speak? No? Okay. Right, so to quickly sum up this agenda item, basically requesting an extension to the McCloud rectification determination process to the 31st of August 2026. So we're now going to have a move to vote. Members, those for the extension to McCloud, please put your hands up. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, right, so now we move to agenda item number 7, which is the Pension Regulators General Code practice, and this is a compliance update. Before I hand over to Choudhury to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 18 of the agenda pack. And just a reminder to that recommendation, so you're going through the pack, and it's that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee notes progress made against the action plan to secure compliance with the General Code of Practice. And I'm now going to ask for a seconder.
A seconder, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. And I'm now going to kindly hand over to Choudhury, who's the Governance Officer at Nottinghamshire County Council. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning to you all. The report you have before you explains a little bit of background, setting out the role of the Pensions Regulator, including the requirements that are placed on it by the Public Service Pensions Act. This requires the regulator to issue a code or codes of practice in respect of certain matters. In January 2024, the regulator published a single code which consolidated multiple existing codes that covered all different types of pension schemes, and this came into effect from March 2024. Within that piece of work, it also introduced a couple of modules that haven't previously been covered. So this is now the comprehensive set of codes for all pension schemes. To understand how the fund complied with the code, we commissioned the actuary, Barnett Waddingham, to undertake a reverse gap analysis. And this looked at all our arrangements against both the regulator's requirements and also carried out an assessment against the recommendations made by the Scheme Advisory Board's Good Governance Review, which was, I think, 2021. The outcome of that was a number of areas where were identified where the fund could enhance its arrangements to ensure compliance. From that, we developed an action plan. A copy of that plan is attached as Appendix A to the report, and it identifies those actions that have now been completed as well as those where work continues. The covering report also provides commentary on the continuing actions so that you can have assurance about the ongoing work. Before I hand it over for you all to consider on a related note, I just wanted to take the chance for a small plug in relation, if I may, please. Firstly, thank you to those of you who have completed the training needs analysis, and please may I give those of you who haven't a gentle nudge to give it your attention as soon as you can. It's a key part of our compliance with the knowledge and skills requirements and making sure that we can evidence that and support you getting training you need to be able to confidently and appropriately carry out your role as committee members. So plug ended, and thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you, Jo. So I'm now just going to ask if there's any committee members here who wish to speak on that agenda item. No? Okay, thank you. Sure.
Can I just ask what cyber documents are?
I was going to say, if you
so there's a requirement on the fund to deal with cyber risk. So obviously you'll be aware of recent hacks at M&S and at the co-op. So it's on the fund to put measures in place to protect itself So we've been working with Aon and we have developed a cyber risk strategy, cyber hygiene guidelines and an incident response plan. We're also taking other steps with our main administration system to move that from an on-premise setup to in the cloud. So it's off-premise and it has all the necessary security protections. So it's all to do with risk management and that, I suppose, more general ICT security from a cyber risk perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from committee members? No. Thank you. Right then, so to sum up, Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee notes the progress made against the action plan to secure compliance with general code of practice. And that's noted. Now, move on. Thank you. Making good progress now on agenda item number 8. Pension Fund Treasury Management Outturn 2024, that's 25. And before I hand over to Kieran to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 31 of the agenda pack. And I'm going to do another kind of reminder so you don't have to go through the pack. And it is that the Pension Fund Committee members approve the Outturn statement as set out in the report. And I'm now going to ask for a seconder.
I second the chair.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. I'm now going to hand over to Kieran Guilfoyle, our investment officer at Nottinghamshire County Council.
Thank you, Chair. Responsibility for the Treasury management of the pension fund was delegated to the Pension Fund Committee in 2020. And committee therefore receives 3 Treasury management reports a year, this one being the year-end outturn, and the other 2 are the Treasury management strategy and the mid-year report. The main points to note in this report are during 2024-25, all cash investment activities were undertaken in accordance with the approved limits as set out in the Treasury management strategy. Cash balances at the year end were approximately 125 million, and the table in paragraph 9 shows the types of investment that this might be required for at short notice. In addition, of course, to providing funds for the monthly pension payroll. Over the course of the year, the fund earned 4.99% on its cash investments, slightly above the benchmark of 24-25, which was 4.77%. And comparative data was also sought from our LGPS central partner funds, and our rate of return was broadly in line with, if not slightly higher than, our partners. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kieran, for that report. Thank you. Right. Now, I want to ask if there's any members here who wish to make a comment on that agenda item. No? Okay, thank you. That's been noted. So basically, to sum up, the Pension Fund Committee members approved the Outturn statement as set out in the report. Just going to now move to the vote with members. So those for, please raise your hands. Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, right. Now we're on to agenda item number 9, which is the local government pension scheme all-in symposium of May 2025. And before I hand over again to Kieran to introduce the report, I'd like to move a recommendation on page 37 of the agenda pack. And a kindly reminder of that recommendation. There's two things here. The Pension Fund Committee members and/or its officer representatives continue to attend appropriate conferences to enable the committee to be kept up to date with the main national topics that relate to investments. And second item, that members consider if there are any actions they require in relation to the issues contained within that report. Now I'm going to ask for a seconder again.
I second the chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. And so I'm going to kindly hand over again to Kieran Guilfoyle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The 2025 LGPS Pooling Symposium was held on the 6th and 7th of May, and I attended as an officer. Many different investment and pooling related issues were covered during the conference, and details of the main sessions are set out in the report. Thank you.
Right, now I'm going to ask if there's any committee members here who wish to speak on this agenda item as well. So there's none. So again, we're now going to go to a vote on the recommendation set out in the report. And again, we're going to vote by show of hands. Those for the report. Thank you. Can you show those? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, so I note that the report's been carried. Thank you. So now we'll move to agenda item number 10, which is the Local Authority Pension Forum business meetings. And like I say, I'm going to be handing over to Kieran again. So before I hand over to Kieran to introduce that report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 40 of the agenda pack. That recommendation being that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee notes the contents of the report. I'm going to ask once again for a seconder.
I second the chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. So we're going to hand over again to Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. The Local Authority Pension Fund Forum was formed in 1990 to provide an opportunity for the UK's local authority pension funds to discuss investment and shareholder engagement issues. This now also includes the pensions pools as well as the funds. The forum exists to assist administering authorities in the discharge of their statutory responsibilities and to promote the long-term investment interests of UK local authority pension funds. LAPF holds business meetings quarterly, and I attended the April meeting as a pension fund officer representative. The meetings cover various issues. The January meeting included, among other things, a discussion on LAPF's policy on engaging with companies working in conflict-affected and high-risk areas such as Ukraine and Israel. And at the April meeting, updated members on what has been called ESG rollback in the wake of some of President Trump's policy decisions. At both meetings, were also presented updates on LAPF's quarterly company engagement work, and links to these updates can be found on the pension fund's website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kieran, for the report. And this report is for noting only. Noted, is there any comments from any members on that report? No? Okay, that's been noted then. Agenda item number 11, proxy voting. I'm going to be handing over to Kieran again. So, before I hand over to Kieran again, I'm just going to introduce that report. So I'd like to move the recommendation on page 44 of the agenda pack, and that recommendation being that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee notes the contents of the report. Going to ask again for a seconder.
I second the chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. Now going to hand over once again to Kieran. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. The pension fund has responsibility for voting any directly held shares, and voting is undertaken on the fund's behalf by Hermes EOS in line with the voting principles of LGPS Central. LGPS Central also engages with the companies that it has holdings in, and this is reported in its quarterly stewardship update. And the most recent update highlights other things, again, how the Trump administration's trade policies could impact on companies' ESG strategies as companies reroute their supply chains to avoid high tariffs. An overview of the Hermes EOS voting activity and Central's engagement work is shown in the report and is also published on the fund's website every quarter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kieran. Once again, I'm going to ask if there's any members here who wish to speak on that agenda item. Thoughts? Come on, Councillor Pearce.
Can I just ask a question? I think it's quite interesting that in terms of more than half of the meetings concerned, Hermes voted against something or other, which I think actually is quite encouraging. And I have had some additional data from Sarah, thank you. I'd just like perhaps for the committee for you to explain a bit further the sort of principles on which they tend to be voting against things, you know, where the areas of particular concern possibly tend to be.
Most of the voting, I think, concerns remuneration policies and how certain kind of decision-making behaviour is rewarded or not by the companies concerned, in line with the LGPS central principles. I mean, the headlines don't really tell much of the story, really, because they're just to do with remuneration or appointments and things like that. You don't really get to the nitty-gritty of the ESG issues that really underlie all that. They are covered in the updates that they publish, and we could inquire further into the other data that they supply and ask them to do.
I'll be led by the chair on that, but so what I'm getting is the message that perhaps concern about proposals to play directors too much, frankly, and you know, which I think most people would be quite supportive of. I'll leave it to the chairman whether he wants more, but I thank you for the explanation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Do we have any other members who to speak on this agenda item? Neil.
Do Hermes have guidance from us in terms of how we would like them to vote on particular issues? Do they work within a framework which we've given them?
Well, they work within the principles that LGPS Central provide them, that we agree to ourselves as a fund. The principles are on our website, and it can be found on the pension fund's website, and that's dictates how Hermes go about the proxy voting.
Thank you for your response. Have we got any other questions from committee members on this agenda item? No, thank you. So that it's just noting that we've listened to the report. Okay. So we now move on to agenda number 12, Fit for the Future. And some of those members who've been on the pension committee previously would have been going through the early stages of the Fit for the Future, and there's going to be a considerable amount of work within the county council pensions team on this Fit for the Future government response to consultation. So there's going to be plenty to discuss over the next subsequent meetings, as well as today's. Okay, before I hand over to Tamsin to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 52 of the agenda pack. A reminder of that recommendation. That members of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee will be update on the government's Fit for the Future programme. And once again, I'm going to now ask for a seconder.
I second the chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. And I'm now very pleased to hand over to Tamsin Rabbits, who is our Head of Pension Fund Investments here at Nottinghamshire County Council. Thank you, Tamsin.
Thank you, Chair. The Fit for the Future review was launched by the government last year, incorporating a consultation on LGPS pooling, local investment and governance of funds and pools, which the fund responded to in January following discussions with committee at previous meetings. The government has now published its response to the consultation exercise, essentially confirming the high-level plans, but with a few welcome tweaks to some details. Some of these proposals will not impact our fund or pool, as we already operate in line with the requirements. Most significantly, our pool, LGPS Central Limited, which we part own, has received government approval to continue as a pooling company. 2 other pools are not in this position, and their member funds are seeking new pools. The key proposals, which will have an implication for the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund, are as follows. The delegation of implementation of investment strategy to the pool. Currently, implementation decisions are delegated to officers and informed by conversations with the committee. All assets will be put under pool management. This means that the pool will be able to decide what the fund invests in and whether to hold or sell our current investments. This includes the management of investment cash. The pool will also be responsible for the appointment of all investment managers. The fund's investment strategy statement will need to include Nottinghamshire Pension Fund's approach to local investments and work with authorities to identify local investment opportunities. Some proposals on governance will have an impact. Many Nottinghamshire already comply with as a matter of good practice, as mentioned by Joe previously, but others will require some changes, such as the appointment of a senior LGPS officer, and we will also need to review our existing strategies once the new guidance has been published. In addition, the proposals have a substantial implication on LGPS Central with many new responsibilities, and this may include the addition of new partner funds as shareholders or clients of the pool. There is a huge amount of detail behind these proposals, much of which is still to be finalised through legislation, regulations and guidance, and still more at a practical level between the pool and partner funds. In order to help committee members understand these proposals, we're planning a working party to follow the meeting in November, which will include a joint presentation on these issues from LGPS Central and officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Comes in. Report there. Thank you. Just going to ask any members here who wish to make comments on the Fit for the Futures agenda item. Thank you. It's
Chairman, it just gives us more flexibility for ourselves to where we're investing in our funds.
Sorry, could you ask?
You're giving us more flexibility.
No, less flexibility. A lot of the decisions will no longer be our decisions.
Basically, we're being governed even more than what we have been.
Hi, I'm here.
Yes. Councillor Paul.
Thank you very much. Just on F, which was just referred to in essence, we've got our own fiduciary duties in terms of looking after our funds. We've got our own ethical investments and things that we've decided ourselves. This is looking for a compromise, and it's also looking for a slightly committee design and council account. It's actually taking away, I would suspect, sort of the sovereignty that covers the pension fund. I'll be interested as we move forward to find out how this can be resolved. It's fine if every member of the pool has the same ethos, the same financial situations, but if you have variations, I don't know how you thought of a compromise. So I'll be very interested moving forward if we actually get that fully explored. I presume that's what these working groups will be doing.
There's certainly very big issues, as you identify, that are generating a lot of conversation between partner funds and pools and feeding back into the government. I think from a responsible investment standpoint, at the moment, we're in a strong position in that our views across partner funds are very well aligned. From the financial point of view, there are some differences between partner funds in how much risk they like to take in certain asset classes and certain beliefs they have. So particularly for Nottinghamshire, we are in an unusual position in that we have a specific allocation to UK equities which has been discussed at previous meetings, that's not something which is common to other part funds at the moment. So there are conversations ongoing as to all of these. I would point out that one of the things which is not changing and which is the most important thing is that the asset allocation and strategy will continue to be set by the Pension Fund Committee. So it'll be the Pension Funds Committee, how much we allocate to how much to fixed income. So that kind of decision, which is the main driver of returns, will still be the Pension Fund Committee. It's just when it gets to the detail of, well, which region are we investing in, which manager, those decisions will be paused in the future.
Comes in. Any other members make comment on Fit for Futures? No, thank you. So that report was just for noting. So we're going to lots to discuss for Fit for Futures in the future. If anybody wants to contact members informally to discuss, please do so. Right, so we're going to move on now to item number 13, which is agenda item number 13, Independent Advisors Report. And the committee will now receive the Independent Advisors Report for the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund. So who is William? Oh yes. Yeah, so going to move over to William. I've met William before at a conference. And, William's our independent advisor for Nottinghamshire Pension Fund. Over to you, William. Thank you. Sorry.
And very briefly, for those of you who haven't met me before, my role here.
Sorry, William. So I just need to take a second.
Sorry, yeah, please take a second. Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. Thank you. Sorry, over to you, William. That's my mistake. Thank you.
Very briefly, for those of you who haven't met me before, my role as independent advisor here is, first of all, to give proper advice, which you are obliged to take under the LGPS regulations. But actually, more importantly, it is to provide challenge, both to fund managers and to officers and to yourselves, but also to provide context. And when I report at these meetings, it's normally about providing a bit of context. I try and look backwards a little bit, what's happened, which is important, but much more forwards, what you should be thinking about in the future. Big caveat. Investment is all about probabilities, and I can guarantee you that when I come back in 2 months' time, some of what I've said today will turn out to have been wrong. So I shan't be surprised if you say, William, you've got that bit wrong. I do use a framework which is based on data when I'm talking to try and predict what's going to happen, because I find data is more helpful than just subjective opinion. And the data is really based on the amount of money and credit which is flowing around the world. I'm happy to go into it in detail separately, but probably not in committee. Okay, what's happened? A great deal has happened over the last few months. I think more than probably any time in the 40 plus years I've been working. The big things are obviously tariffs, and trade is really the bedrock of prosperity and market capitalism. So any form of tariff which reduces trade, I'm afraid, is going to reduce prosperity in aggregate. There may be winners, but in aggregate, the world will be a poorer place. And then taxation, or maybe I should really talk more about the government's fiscal positions. Governments are all spending a lot of money on defence and for many other reasons. Some are raising taxation, UK, some are not, US. But the real point is that the government's levels of debt are rising for many countries, including the US, UK, France, Japan, Germany. And the cost, but more importantly, the cost of servicing that debt is growing because bond yields are higher. And under the current trajectory, it is almost inevitable that at some point in the future, and it's probably short to medium term, but not long term, governments are going to have some kind of financial crisis because they simply cannot afford to carry on servicing the debt. It's no surprise, therefore, that bond yields have gone up. I think they should be a lot higher than they are. The governments have found ways to try and keep government bond yields down. What is surprising is that equities are as strong as they are. Both the US and the UK are close or at all-time highs. And I can give you a number of explanations why that might be. People might say, well, people expect rate cuts, therefore equities are going to go up. They might say earnings per share growth, particularly among the big tech companies in America, has been very strong. It's going to carry on. That's why they're so strong. But I don't actually believe either of those. I think the real reason why equities have been so strong is that governments have quite quietly gone back to what we call quantitative easing, i.e. printing money, just put it into the world, and that money has to go somewhere. And I think some of it is going into the equity market. What result is that valuations in equities are really quite high at the moment, particularly in America. At their peak, they were something like 25% higher than history, but also 25% higher than the rest of the world. And they've come back a little bit since then, but they're still very high relative to the world. So looking forward, this is at the bottom of my paper, I think the authorities, and by here I really mean the Federal Reserve in America, have got an almost impossible task. They've got to keep 4 balls in the air, and I think it is absolutely inevitable that they will drop at least one of them. And the question which you investors have to try and work out is which. If I had to make a prediction, I suggest it is inflation. They'll let inflation bubble up more than they would really like to. And we're already seeing this in America, where US inflation is significantly higher than the 2% target, but Trump is still saying cut rates. So just going back to the fund for a few minutes, for 30 seconds, should we be doing anything about it? Well, pension funds are very long-term beasts, and it's very rarely wise to kind of make huge changes in quick order. And I do think that since 2020, we have been at a turning in the kind of financial history. The world going forward is going to be very different from the world in the period 2009 to 2020. It's becoming clearer what it's going to look like. Low growth, higher bond yields, probably higher inflation, but it's certainly not certain. And I'm not recommending any change to the fund at the moment because we're positioned pretty defensively. We have around 30% of our assets invested in vehicles which are intended to try and mitigate the cost to the fund of higher inflation. Things like indexing gilt, infrastructure, real estate. They're not all perfect matches, but they will help. And I go back to where I started. This really is a game of probabilities. You have to try and invest the fund to mitigate as best you can. You're never going to get it all right. So with that, let me stop and open up for questions.
Thank you, William. It's a really good report. And, William's very highly experienced independent pensions advisor, so it's great to be on team here at Nottinghamshire.
Okay, I've been in the market forever.
And yes, so I'm going to ask any questions from members to William. Yes, Councillor Jackson.
So what William's just said, and the government's desperate for money, should we be worried that they might be looking at pension funds to raise money themselves?
Absolutely, yes, and this is precisely why this is why they're making these changes to the LGPS. They may dress it up as being for our own interest, for our pensions interest. Yeah, and there's some benefits in what they're doing, but the real reason is they want us to spend some of our money. It's not just the LGPS, but all pension funds to further their projects. So, I mean, absolutely yes, and it's very much a risk going forward.
Response, William. Any other questions from any other members of the committee on William's report? Thank you. So the report from William Bourne is noted. Right, so now we move on to agenda item number 14, which is the work programme. Recommendation of report as set out on page 60 of the agenda pack. The recommendation being that the committee considers whether any amendments are required to the work programme. Formally move the recommendation. I ask for a seconder.
I second the chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. Now I'm going to hand over to Tamsin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In the appendix, you can see the work programme for the rest of the committee for the current cycle. The committee is asked to identify any additional reports required, and I believe Sarah has a report to bring to your attention.
Okay, Chair. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to, in the September meeting, I would like to bring a report on the access and fairness consultation. This will be a retrospective report. The consultation closes on the 7th of August. And this is to do with realigning regulations to deal with discrimination. There's something to cover McCloud as well. But that's the request to bring it retrospectively. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, is there any members here who wish to make comments on that agenda item? Thank you. Right, so I'm now going to ask for a vote for retrospective to look at the report in September. Those for to retrospectively. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, so that's been carried then. Thank you. Right, so now we move on to agenda item number 15, which is the fund valuation and performance. And again, I'm going to hand over to Tamsin, but before I do so, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 76 of the agenda pack. That recommendation being that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee note the contents of the fund valuation and performance report. And once again, I'm going to ask for a seconder.
I second the chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. And now I'm going to kindly hand over to Tamsin Rabbits, Head of Pension Fund Investments.
Thank you, Chair. This report, one of our regular quarterly reports, to inform the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund of the value of the pension fund at the end of the latest quarter and provide information on the performance of the fund. The table in paragraph 3 shows the valuation at the end of March, at the end of December, and the value a year ago. The fund investments have decreased by 4.6 million, which is 0.1% since the previous quarter, but have increased by 237 million, or 3.4% since last year. Paragraph 6 shows a more detailed analysis of the valuations by portfolio, and paragraph 8 shows the unaudited annual figures for 24-25 and the figures for last year. Paragraphs 9 to 20 relate to the fund's holdings in fossil fuel companies and investments in sustainable equities and renewable energy. There are a number of caveats that need to be understood in interpreting this disclosure, which are explained in the report, and I refer members to these. Over time, it is anticipated that fossil fuels will decrease as a proportion of the fund and that investment in sustainable equity and renewable energy will increase, but this long-term trend will not be smooth. At the end of March, we had an estimated investment of 154 million in fossil fuel companies, 2.1% of the fund, and sustainable and renewable energy investments amounting to just over £1 billion, or 14.1% of the fund. Members are reminded that a more thorough assessment of our exposure to fossil fuels through our equity investments is provided by LGPS Central's carbon risk analysis. The core index portfolio section reflects the equity market movements over the last quarter. 100 million was redeemed from this portfolio during the quarter as part of the continued implementation of last year's asset allocation decisions. LGPS Central has developed an oversight arrangement for the core index portfolio to bring this under pool management. Responsibility for voting on these holdings within these funds has transferred to LGPS Central, so our common strategy will apply equally to holdings in the core index. This arrangement came into effect in January 2025. The Schroders portfolio shows the regional analysis of holdings and purchases and sales during the period. Here too, there was a tranche of redemptions during the quarter as part of the rebalancing of the fund, reflecting asset growth and the decision to reduce the allocation to listed equities taken at the last review. The LGPS Central portfolio shows the investments made through the pool. Higher yields in the quarter enabled further purchases of index-linked gilts and conventional gilts in line with our investment strategy. Aberdeen have continued to manage our property portfolio. The specialist portfolio section shows the composition and valuation of the specialist portfolio and the transactions during the quarter. And the section on responsible investment activity summarises some of the responsible investment activity which has taken place during the quarter on behalf of the fund. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tamsin, for your report on the fund valuation performance. Do we have any members? Any questions on that report? None. Thank you. So the report from Tamsin has been included. Right, so now we move to that agenda item number 16, which is exclusion of the public. We'll now move to that part of the agenda that proposes we meet in a closed session to consider the exempt information in agenda items 17 and 18. I therefore invite the committee to resolve that the public be excluded for the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the discussions are likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as described in Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. I now kindly ask for a seconder.
Seconder, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Choudhury. We'll now take a vote by show of hands. Those for exclusion of the public. Thank you. Any against? And any abstentions? No, that's been carried. I now wish to thank members of the public and our viewers online for their interest in today's Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee. Just going to pause and wait for members of the public to leave and the live stream to end. Thank you.